Thank you for coming today. I'm Teresa Whipple, and I am the publisher of myedmondsnews.com, and we are here tonight because we all want to learn more about the Regional Fire Authority annexation, which is on our ballots. The goal of this event is to facilitate a discussion, and I'm so grateful to these two folks for agreeing to represent both the pro and the con sides of the Regional Fire Authority annexation, otherwise known as Proposition 1. And for those who aren't familiar, that's basically asking us voters whether we want to be annexed into the Regional Fire Authority. And the participants are Adam Cornell on my immediate left, who is representing the pro side, and Jim Oganowski, who's representing the con side. And, truly this is not a debate. That is not the purpose. We could do a debate, but we have agreed in conversation that we want this to be a respectful discussion about the issues, which sometimes is in short supply. And also to have a chance to talk through and to answer questions that you all have. We aren't going to be here all night, so we are going to be keeping time. We have time limits for various things, which I'll go over, but Janice Carr over there is timing. Could you demonstrate what the sound looks like when we get to the end? There you go. So that means your time is up. And for those of you in the audience, that's going to be the time limit for your question. We are asking people to keep it to 15 seconds. And the reason is sometimes people have a tendency to stand up and give us their opinion about whether they support or oppose the measure, but that's not really helping us. We want these two gentlemen who have volunteered their time to be able to answer your questions. So we will keep 15-second limit on the time. And again, if you haven't put a ticket in the box, you don't have to do that right away. You can be thinking of a question as people are talking and put that ticket in the box anytime. Make sure I've got all my notes here. So Jim, Adam, and I agreed on 10 topic areas. We went back and forth on email. They each had their own sets of ideas. I tried to correlate them and collaborate between the two of them as to making sure that we were on target, and that's what we're doing there. They will each have 30 seconds for an opening statement, and then up to 3 minutes for closing remarks. And we flipped a coin to see who would go first in the opening statement, and Jim is going to be going first, and Adam will be going first in the closing statements. And then after that, we'll go to the Q&A. And did I forget anything either of you can think of? It looks like I've gotten through all my notes.
Timing for each of our...
Yes, the answers will each be timed 1 minute. They have 1 minute to respond, so they're going to learn to be very succinct. However, if one of them feels like the other one needs some additional enhancement of their answer, they are welcome to also add on. So 1 minute, but could be more. But again, we are going to be keeping track of the time. We do want you to all get out of here at some point tonight, but we also want to make sure you get your questions answered. So, I think with that, well, thank you, Carl. I knew there was a reason why you came tonight. So we'll get started, and we will start with the opening statement, and that will start with Jim.
See how this works? Yeah, push it out there now.
Good evening, everyone. Really appreciate the turnout. I'm Jim Oganowski. Just a quick introduction. I'm an 18-year resident of Edmonds, a newbie by a lot of standards here, but I really love this place, and because of that is why I'm up here representing a broad group of concerned citizens. My background: 40 years as an engineer.
Wow. Is that really 1 minute?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, 30
seconds.
seconds. You have 30 more. Consider that the trial run.
Already.
It's all right.
A 40-year career at Boeing as an engineer. I retired as a vice president, senior chief engineer in charge of airplane structures. So I had the full structural responsibility for all commercial airplanes when I retired. As an engineer, I trust but verify. So you might be seeing a lot of that, and I obviously like data. I like numbers. I like data, and over the course of my career, had a lot of opportunities for program management and that. So I think I'm fairly well versed in with our city finances. I've also been involved with since retiring with the Citizens Housing Commission, with some of the budgeting things going on within the city. And as an aside, to keep myself sane and my wife, we're raising a guide dog for blind puppies. Thanks.
All right. My name's Adam Cornell, and I'm here representing the pro side of Proposition 1. My family moved to Edmonds in 2002, so that's about 23 years. And proud Edmonds resident. I spent my career as both a deputy prosecutor and my last 4 years as the elected prosecutor, protecting the people of Edmonds and Snohomish County. In that capacity, I'm proud to be joined by two people who have actually been in their families Edmonds residents longer than I have. Maria Montalvo, who is on the pro committee, and Pat Hepler, who was a firefighter here in Edmonds, and I think beats Maria and me both for length of time in the city. We're proud Edmonds residents and happy to be here to present the pro side of the coin. And I do want to thank Teresa for putting this together and Jim for agreeing to be engaged in this process, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue.
And you can hang on to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And turn it off if you like.
But
And it's on.
yeah, by the time it's done, we'll get used to
Yeah.
it.
So are you going to discuss the topic areas now?
Yeah, well, first we're going to, first topic 1 is actually an overview of the annexation ballot measure and how we got here. And I also had Jim and Adam review this because you know what? I started going through all my notes because we've been covering this issue for a while. It could take days to explain all the history of this, but I'm just going to give a brief overview and they will let me know, although they did review everything, if there's something I left out that was important. But in 2017, the city of Edmonds actually had its own fire department until 2010 when the city began contracting with South County Fire. Then it was known as Fire District 1, and we're going to have some name changes here, so it gets confusing. And part of the reason is I know there was a woman who said, there's so many acronyms, and that's true, there are. So we'll see if we can sort some of that out for you tonight. In 2017, South County Fire reorganized into what is now known as the South Snohomish County Fire and Rescue Regional Authority, otherwise known as the RFA. And that's why we sometimes refer to it as the RFA, and sometimes we refer to it as South County Fire, and it used to be Fire District 1, so you see how this gets a little complicated. But the reorganization gave that RFA the ability to annex cities into the fire authority as long as the voters approved, and that's where we are today with this on the ballot. And there are voters in several nearby cities that are doing that. They have agreed to annexation, and they include the cities of Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, Mill Creek, and Briar. With the annexation, the city governments no longer pay for fire and EMS from the city budgets. The payments are instead shifted to property owners who fund the Regional Fire Authority directly through increased property taxes. Now, at the end of 2023, and remember we had a 20-year contract at the time that we started in 2010. At the end of 2023, South County Fire, or the RFA, exercised a 2-year cancellation clause. And that means the contract will expire at the end of this year. And that shifted the discussion into the Edmonds City Council trying to decide what to do next about this fire contract expiration. And they began exploring options in the last year in 2024 for fire service, and they considered 4 of them, and we'll be talking more about those in a moment, continuing the existing contract with South County Fire that we've had, restarting a fire department in Edmonds that we used to have, using other fire and EMS providers. There are other cities nearby and other entities that have fire and EMS services that we could possibly partner with. And then the 4th one, which the council ultimately decided on, which was annexing to the Regional Fire Authority. And the council decided to put that on the ballot, and that's where we are today. So, anything you want to add to that before we move on? Either one of you?
Well, I guess because this is one of our topic areas, I'll start with my, 3 minutes, Janice?
3 minutes for closing.
No, nice try. Can you tell this guy was a former prosecutor?
Oh, come on.
How many minutes do I have? No. So the next step, this was just if you wanted to add anything that was missing, but the next question is actually talking about the services that we've received from South County Fire for the past 10 years under the contract. But did you want to add anything about the general? Yes?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I guess just one thing I'd like to put it in context, timing-wise, a little bit here, is that the cancellation notice that the city received from the RFA came 3 weeks before our new mayor took office. So that's a little bit interesting in the sense that it didn't give our mayor an opportunity to renegotiate the contract, and hence a little bit of why we're here and some of the discussion that you'll be hearing tonight.
Well, and I guess I would add in is just about as brief period as Jim is, there was nothing nefarious about what happened as far as the cancellation of the contract. The city could have similarly canceled the contract, but decided to do so. And we're going to talk about this more later, but the city of Edmonds has been underpaying for fire services for many years, and I think that context is important.
And I know we're going to talk a lot more about what you just said, so thank you. All right. So, second topic area that we will discuss, and this is going to be for approximately 5 minutes. I'm not going to have Janice time this part, but I'll keep my eyes on my timer here. So let's talk about the services that Edmonds has received from South County Fire for the past 10 years under the contract. And by that, I mean, we know there are pluses. There's a lot that South County Fire gives us. There's, obviously high quality care, which we've heard a lot about. Public engagement, they do a lot of outreach to the community. They do smoke alarms, they do car seats, they do safety helmets, all kinds of things for the community. And then, of course, there's a cost that comes with some of that, and that by some people could be perceived as a minus because it's costly, it's expensive. Let's see. Adam, I'll let you start. How would you like to talk about that issue first?
Sure. You've already mentioned some of the benefits that we get from South County Fire, but I'm gonna talk about a few more. First of all, there can be, I believe, no doubt that what we have received from South County Fire since 2010 has been absolutely high quality fire, EMS, and emergency services. Dave Teitzel, who is an opponent of this measure, is a former city councilor in Edmonds, has echoed that sentiment repeatedly in both written material, and he has said that publicly. So I think that's really important. But why has it been such high quality EMS, fire, and emergency services? Well, first of all, let's talk about a cardiac arrest save rate of 71% that's double the national average. We are talking about literally in Edmonds saving more lives than other jurisdictions, both locally and around the United States. We're talking about hazardous materials response, marine response, disaster planning, earthquake. We're talking about earthquakes, trains, the port that we have. We're talking about an agency that's ready to step in at a moment's notice and make us safer. But we're also talking about some of the preventative programs that Teresa mentioned, and I'm going to add additional ones that are beyond simply safety checks on fire alarms or safety walkthroughs at condominiums for folks of all ages and income levels in our city. Let's talk about community resource paramedics. This program has been, in my opinion, a model of one in not just in Washington, but around the country, working with social workers, reducing high utilizer individuals who are the folks who are repeatedly calling 911 and are using our resources and getting them out of a cycle of desperation and addiction to try to make our community safer by getting to the root causes of why people are having to be patients of 911. We're talking about mutual aid agreements that are already in place. We're talking about training. We're talking about an infrastructure that has existed in this community since 2010 and an agency that is absolutely ready to go. And they know our community. Since 2010, these firefighters and their staff have been protecting us. And frankly, it hasn't been until this proposition came to the fore, even before it was put on the ballot, that I've started to hear complaints about how our fire agency has been serving us. I've lived in this community, like I said, for almost 23 years, and I've never heard a complaint about South County Fire. And one of the reasons is, or many of the reasons are what I just stated.
Perfect timing. That was about halfway. Jim?
Okay. First of all, I echo a lot, to be honest, what Adam just said, and I applaud and respect our first responders. We do get quality service from our fire authority. Having said that, we get it under our contract, right? So we're under contract for the services that Adam just said, and we're paying for that about $12 million a year right now for everything that was just said. Quality service, good response, the cardiac arrest pieces, and I'd like to do a public service announcement after this if I could. So a little over $12 million for all those services. And in our contract, we pay full union negotiated wage and benefits for all those services. Plus, we pay administrative overhead for part of the overhead for the South County Fire as well. So that's a cost plus contract. We pay fully burdened rates for everything that we contract for. So the notion that we're not paying our fair share is erroneous. Our contract does not allow that. There's provisions in our contract that escalate with wage increases. They escalate for any state mandates that come on. We've got to pick those up. And there's provisions to renegotiate the contract for different service levels and or staffing levels. So the notion that we're not paying our fair share is just wrong. It's just wrong. So that, you know, and we're getting that same service benefit for the $12 million that we're currently spending. Annexation, however, wants to almost double that. If we annex, it's almost $21 million for everything that was just said, no change in service level, and for almost twice the price. For me, I just have a hard time understanding where that, how we get from one to the other. The other part of this, if you look at the South County Fire funding, they've got a $45 million fund balance right now. What's our fund balance in our city? Almost zero. It's a $500,000 or so. So to suggest that we've been underpaying and they're suffering as a result of that, it doesn't show up in the numbers. I'm a numbers person, so I mean, if I look at it, it just doesn't show up in the numbers to suggest that we're underpaying.
We're at 5, and you know the truth is that we have a discussion about the rate structure later, but I think we probably should maybe bump that up sooner because we've already gotten into it. You know, would one of you want to volunteer? I don't know if you want to be Adam or Jim, but just talk about what the costs are now and what the costs will be, and then we can kind of go back and forth about where you disagree and agree on that.
Well, certainly. I mean, it is true that we have been underpaying. We know that. The numbers bear that out. We have been paying 76 cents on $1,000, whereas the other partners in South County are paying $129. And by law, there has to be parity between all of the cities in the RFA. Yes, costs have gone up. If you've gone to the grocery store, you're paying a little bit more for eggs than you did back in 2010. The costs that have increased have not just increased for Edmonds, but they've increased for all the other jurisdictions. So we're talking about rising prices that account for inflation, the increased cost of equipment, as well as other costs like paid sick leave, other mandates that have come down from the state. It is undeniable that it is going to cost more for those reasons, but it's like everything else costs more. I don't know if I've completely answered your question.
Can we talk about what the baseline we're looking at in terms of how much the contract costs now versus what it would cost under the RFA?
So I would say what the contract costs now is correct. It's about, I think it's about $12.5 million. And like I said, we have been getting a screaming deal from the RFA for a very long time, and we can't simply do that anymore. And to Jim's point about, you know, the financial reserves of South County, the RFA, to me, that's even more reason to join, because we're talking about joining an agency that has unbelievable resources and can continue to support the people of the city, as opposed to trying to have the city pay contract to contract, or farming this out to someplace else where they don't have the same level of financial health. I think it's a good thing that we have a regional fire authority that is so fiscally strong. That's exactly the kind of partnership that we need. I mean, I guess my wife would have probably wished that I had been a little more financially strong when she married me.
Oh, on that note, what would you like to add?
I don't know how I top that one, but okay, getting back to the finances and how much it costs. We've already agreed that it's costing $12 million now. It will cost $21 million and if we join. And the reason it's changing is going from the contract model that we currently have to the assessed valuation model that they want us to join in. To Adam's point, once we join under the assessed valuation model, then he is correct that legally we're all under the same umbrella and the rates have to be the same. But under a contract, we negotiate the contract. We've negotiated our contract with South County Fire for the number of first responders that staff our stations 24/7. They do a great job of that. The fact that if you go from that contract to the assessed valuation model for the same service level, how do you make up that difference of $8 or $9 million a year difference? Staffing, more into their reserves. I haven't been able to get answers to that, so that we know where our money is going. What value are we getting for the additional $8 or $9 million that we would be spending as a community? Whereas we could negotiate a different arrangement to help the rest of the city. We all know we've got some financial problems in the city. So why not save some of that money? It's our money after all. And use it for some of the other city expenses that we currently have.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? And we will get into some of this more later. So, all right.
I'm fine with moving on.
All right, very good. We'll move on. So let's talk about the process for evaluating the alternatives. There have been, and this gets confusing as well, there have been a couple of different reports from the same consultant, and I've seen these conversations come up, and the consultant's name was Fitch, and they basically specialize in fire service analysis. And the first study was done in 2016 when we were looking at some possible cost savings at the time with the existing contract. And then there was another one conducted in 2024 when the council was trying to decide what alternatives were available to them. And I know that both the pro and the con sides have expressed different opinions about those reports and what they said and what they meant. And I know we don't want to go into the weeds of all of that, but maybe, let's see, I guess we'd start with Jim. Oh, well, I was trying to think of who started, but that's okay. You can, yeah. Talk amongst yourselves. I don't know. Yeah. Adam will start with that, and then we'll move on.
Well, we're talking here about the infamous Fitch report, and I'm sure many of you in this room are very educated on this topic, and so Jim and I hope to educate folks at home a little bit more. But I want to be clear about a couple things. The Fitch report is the most reliable study that the city has to show the voters what our best options are. And the Fitch report was quite clear that the lowest cost option for fire, EMS, and emergency services was annexation into the regional fire authority. Now, in this process, many of you who are on the opposite side have approached county leaders, including Councilmember Olson. Councilmember Olson took it upon herself, at the request of somebody I think on Jim's team, to go to a competing emergency services firm and look at the integrity of the Fitch report. And Councilmember Olson, to her credit, did this on her own. And she showed that report to this competitor, and they had a long discussion about it. And the competing emergency services firm couldn't find fault with what was done in the Fitch report. Now, we're going to talk about the other options that were not considered, and I'm sure that Jim is going to have something to say about that, but there are a couple important things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jim. First of all, the Fitch study option of continuing with a long-term contract extension with the city was not considered because of its cost. So that is important for you to know. Other options that were considered or that were not considered were simply not viable. The discussion that some have had about going with Mukilteo, I don't know if you read the Mukilteo Beacon lately, but the city of Edmonds was striping their roads. The city of Mukilteo can't even stripe their own roads. They're not going to be a viable partner for fire and EMS services. So let's not consider that. The Shoreline RFA partnership is also highly unrealistic for a lot of reasons. Number one, they're in a different county and they have a different 911 system. And there is a delay, there would be a delay in the reporting of 911 and how our first responders are able to more quickly respond in that partnership. There was also an analysis that was done by somebody in our community, a guy named Larry Williamson, who I think posted a letter in My Edmonds News and did his own analysis of the partnership with Shoreline and found that at the very best, it was going to be about the same cost as annexing into the RFA. And that's not even considering the fact that we would be abandoning a relationship with an agency that's been protecting us since 2010. So those are my thoughts on the Fitch report for now.
But you're really good at getting to that 2.5 net mark. Your turn.
As Teresa mentioned, there's two Fitch reports, right? The one done a number of years ago and then the most recent one. The one done a number of years ago was much more extensive than the narrowly focused Fitch report that was done in 2014. We spent $40,000 on the Fitch report in 2024, in 2024. On a very narrow focus, as Adam kind of described. I mean, looking at annexation, looking at starting our own fire department, looking at Shoreline, working with Shoreline. Even in that year, things have changed with the Shoreline annexation. But let's break down, what the Fitch report says earlier versus this latest one. The earlier Fitch report had a lot more detail in other ways to save money on rather than just annexation of that. For instance, performance-based metrics. What's the turnout time out of the stations? They claimed that in their analysis back then that our turnout times were almost twice the national average, which translates into response times and that. And we won't get into all the nuances there, but they equate that to almost $1 million a year difference. That was the first Fitch report. Second Fitch report didn't address any of the financial aspects of it other than joining between the three options. So there's a lot more detail in the first one than there is in the second one that we haven't been made aware of, and our city council didn't take advantage of understanding both those to make an informed decision. The other thing on the Fitch reports, they didn't consider funding models, the benefit charge funding model, and the assessed valuation portion of the funding model. That wasn't never discussed. So the Fitch reports never provided the information for our city to do an in-depth negotiation with South County Fire for this annexation. So there's a lot of missing information between those two that could have provided us with a better starting point, a better negotiation strategy, and a better outcome for our tax dollars. So to say that the Fitch reports were all-inclusive, if you combine both of them, I would say so. But taking individually, not so much. And right now, all of the pro side would like us to consider is a 2024 Fitch report. And if you even if you look at the down that report itself, there are opportunities there where you can start up your own fire department at nearly the same cost as what the annexation would be. Particularly when you consider some of the monetary aspects of the withheld transport fees, the $8 million that still owed our city. There's more to the story than just, looking at the 2024 Fitch report. And we'll cover some of that, I think, Teresa.
Yeah, there's
some more detail,
there's
too.
some things you brought up that we still haven't talked about yet, so people are probably going, what is that about? So we'll make sure we get to those as well. So Adam, very quickly, was there anything that you wanted to immediately respond to in that, or do you want to get to that as we go further?
Let me say a couple things just immediately. The fact that Fitch was hired in 2016, I think the report was in 2016, and then turned around and later hired to do the latest report, frankly shows the wisdom of the city because they weren't having to reinvent the wheel. The city went back to the same emergency services firm that knew the city. There's a reason that these other options weren't considered, and even if they had been considered, we're going to talk about those and why they're not viable, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's actually the next section. So, yeah, let's talk about what other options are available. Jim, why don't you just start, or sorry, I'm getting off track with who's starting first. Adam, start with kind of what your opinion is based on what you know of what the options are and what the con side has proposed, and what do you see as viable or not viable. I'm not trying to put you against each other. I'd really like you to talk about what might be possible. Are there options that the pro side might consider?
Well, let me say a couple things, and I guess I'll directly answer your question. I don't think there's any other viable options that the city can consider, and I'm going to talk about that. And we don't always have to disagree, and frankly, I think we rarely agree, but we're doing it civilly, which is, I think, the most important thing here for everybody in the room and everybody watching at home. The Fitch report was sound, and it was determined that annexation was the lowest cost option. You can read it for yourself if you haven't already done so. Again, Councilmember Olson sent it out to a competing emergency services firm and determined that what the city had done was appropriate and the study was sound. But I digress. There are no other viable options for two reasons, and I want to make this perfectly clear to everybody. Number one was the Fitch report considerations, and the other options that we have heard talk of publicly are simply not viable, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the second reason I think is also incredibly important, and that's the impact to Edmonds residents and our city becoming a lesser city if we fail to annex because of the massive fiscal impact to the city if we do not annex into the RFA. We're talking about a 17% hit to the general fund of our city if this proposition does not pass. We're talking about $8.9 million needed to find, that the city needs to find to cover the cost of a contract extension, which is less than if we pass annexation, by the way. Let me repeat that. If we extend the contract, it's going to be more expensive than if we, ultimately to your tax bill, whether it's property tax or sales tax or levy, it's going to be less expensive if we annex. But the city is going to be devastated is probably too large a word because we're still early in this, but devastation on the way, I think, is a fair way to put it. I don't want to overstate it. The city is in crisis, and I believe that it's important for folks to know that the city council has already engaged in fiscal austerity measures to try to fix this problem, but it's not enough. The city has already cut 6 police positions plus an assistant chief position, 2 positions related to the Meadowdale preschool program, 4 recreation staff program positions, and that's only like $2 million. We're not even there yet, folks. We're talking about 17% of a $51 million general fund budget.
And I need to let Jim start talking now. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, so devastated is too strong of a word. The city does have money. It's just got to reappropriate it a little bit differently. We have to bring in more and different revenue, and there's opportunities for that. For instance, for sales tax. I mean, right next door in Linwood, they have a higher sales tax rate than we did. So every time we spend money at the Alderwood Mall, we're spending it at, they're getting a sales tax increase more than if they spend it here. So there are opportunities for the city to take to mitigate the draconian, sky is falling scare tactics that we're starting to see. In terms of getting back to the topic, in terms of our opportunities, we do have opportunities to look at this differently. Potential collaborations with other nearby municipalities, fire districts, the hospital district itself for EMS, the port authority for the marine services, and other public-private partnerships that can be brought to bear on our problem. Yes, we have a problem, but there are solutions out there too that haven't been fully explored. And that's what we're suggesting when on our side, want to hit the pause button, provide us time to really explore these options as opposed to just a quick knee-jerk reaction. And unfortunately, that's a position we've been put in. And I'm not going to fault our mayor or our city council because the position that they were put in, they got handed this annexation after the RFA divorced us. Then they offer us the annexation with a quick turnaround time that the cities have been trying to respond to. All we're suggesting is let's press a pause button, buy us some more time, and as to Adam's point, I mean, another contract extension has been already negotiated, so we've got continuation of service. What we need is continuation of thought and deliberation and getting us some better options on the table so that we can make an informed decision as opposed to a rushed decision without all the information on the table for the taxpayers to understand.
So if I could just summarize, and I'm sure you will each know if you let me know if I'm not on the right track. What I've heard the people who are opposing annexation is as Jim said, it's been rushed. We need more time to look at other options. I've heard the pro people say that actually we have looked at the options and this is the best option. I also have understood, and I'm sure one of you will let me know if this is wrong, that we will be able to continue our contract for now with the fire district until we figure out what to do next. But that comes at a cost. And I don't think we know for sure what that cost is yet, but that's something that has to be talked about, right? In terms of, or do we know? Do we know how much that would cost us to just stay with the contract for a while if annexation fails?
Well, it already has been negotiated, so we know what it costs, and it costs us about the same as if we annex. So by hitting the pause button, we're not taking on any other costs by annexing right now. Although if we annex right now, then we've set our fate and take a lot of options off the table as we negotiate or as we see our way through the rest of the city's financial problems. And that's what we really need to do. Let's put all of this out on the table so we see where we are, and then we can, as a community, understand where we want to spend our tax dollars. I mean, it's your money. And I think, and I'm glad to see everyone here wanting to understand it and wanting to be informed. And that's what our position really is about informing the community so we can make a better decision, and with no downside of losing service. We are not going to lose any fire protection service one way or the other, regardless of where
Adam really wants to weigh in.
Well,
Thank you.
this is really important. The only certainty for an extension of the contract is through the end of 2025. Fire service, a stable source of funding is not guaranteed beyond 2025. That, folks, is a fact. The idea that we can just continue to renew this contract and that it is going to continue to be the same price in the face of rising inflation, in the face of a city that is facing a massive budget deficit with no guarantee that they're going to continue to pass levies to support not only fire services, but police services in parks and cherished public spaces is a canard. It is an absolute canard. The only guarantee that we have on this contract is through 2025. And so fire service is not certain with regard to the RFA, and any other viable options are not just going to be able to switch the light switch on, and suddenly in 2026 we're going to be with Mukilteo or Shoreline or some other option that's not even viable. So I think that that's super important to understand. Yes, there is going to be stable fire and EMS and emergency services through 2025, but it's less certain after that because we have to pay for it, and you have to pay for it. The city is going to be coming at you with levies and increases in sales tax and having to sell off city assets. Some of the stuff that Jim's team, is proposed to some degree. I mean, the selling of potentially the selling of city assets.
Okay, hold on. This is a conversation between the two of them. You'll have your opportunity
Well, I
for
think
questions.
in your,
Jim,
I want to ask Jim a question.
Yes, please.
I think in your piece, in my experience, the plan, according to you, and I think Daryl wrote the piece, was part of the plan was to increase taxes on businesses, increase sales tax, and sell off non-essential city assets. I mean, I have a copy of the.
That is not true.
It's in the piece though, Jim.
It is true. I wrote it down for me.
I have a.
Oh, okay, we'll keep this up here for now, and we'll get
Go ahead,
your questions in a moment.
Am I wrong?
Thanks.
Wait. So for the most part, you're correct, but you didn't get the details of it. We didn't say what assets they sell, and you were inferring that we're selling off parks. Absolutely not. We're not advocating selling off parks. Selling off police cars. The mayor took us up on this. Now what Adam was just reciting was a plan that was presented to the mayor and the city council before the last budget cycle. So this isn't anything new. This is something that we're sharing now with the public, but the city council members and the mayor, before they got into the budget, we presented what was phrased as a share the pain plan, where we do, as a community, whoever benefits from the community should share in our ability to recover from where we are financially. That includes developers, that includes the residents, our property taxpayers, includes who else?
Well, I think businesses.
Businesses, yeah. So buildings, right. And everyone who contributes to the city and who benefits from the city should help us. And that's what we're all about. I mean, if we're going to be a vibrant community, we should all rally around, including the RFA, and help us rebuild where we want to get to. And by hitting the pause button, it allows us to do that. And as opposed to making a knee-jerk reaction one way or the other. And right now, that's kind of where we are. We haven't seen a physical recovery plan from the city. We presented one. Adam did pretty, some aspects of it he articulated fairly well, but action from the city hasn't been there. So we're continuing to dig the hole deeper, as opposed to recovering or having a financial recovery plan. Basically, putting this RFA annexation on the ballot now is premature because we don't know what else we might need to get us to where we want to go.
Okay,
I don't need to respond.
all right.
Move on to the next.
Very good. So I think this is giving us a good next move to this question of the RFA rate structure. Could each of you share your thoughts on what Edmonds has been paying via contract versus what it will be paying with annexation compared to the other RFA cities? Is it fair, why or why not? And I think this is important because this is what I see that keeps coming up. And Jim mentioned it earlier in the evening. Are we paying our fair share? And frankly, I think that confuses people a lot, because what does that mean? And how do we measure that? And so, Adam, are you starting next?
I think so.
3 times.
Sorry?
Adam started the last 3 to 4 times.
Well, I honestly have, Jim, if you'd like to share, start, feel free. I'm glad somebody's keeping us on track. Thank you.
That's fine. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here in terms of where our current contract is at 12 million to, if we annex it, to $21 million if we annex. So what that translates to is almost double what we currently pay on our city tax bills. We just all received our real estate tax bills in the last few weeks. And if you look at it, there's a City of Edmonds line item on it. And if you double that, that's basically what happens when we join right now. No change in benefits or service levels, but just the almost doubling of that value. Putting it in perspective, for $1 million house, we're currently paying about $1,000 a year. That'll go up to $2,000 a year, strictly from the annexation proposal that's on the table. On the fair share part of it, I mentioned that we are paying our fair share because we're under contract, and it's an escalated contract. As prices go up and costs, as Adam said, yeah, they're going up, but our contract costs go up with it. And we've been escalating our contract costs over the years. Yeah, it's painful for us to pay it, but to suggest that we're not paying our fair share is erroneous. It's all baked into the contract, and that what's the value of our contract is the number of first responders we contract for. Our fire chief himself, there's 2 parts of the RFA if we annex. There'll be 2 new line items on our tax bill. One will be a fire levy rate, and the second one will be a benefit charge fee. The fee is not a tax, so it's not subject to the same 1% rule that escalates the tax. The fire commissioners can raise that fee at their discretion during the course of at each budget cycle. So that's a variable that we don't know how much they'll raise that in any particular year. So that's another variable. And to that point, even our fire chief has said that the benefit charge is a more fair way to assess the cost of service. The benefit charge, for those who may not know, is based on the size and type of structure that they're fighting the fire at. The land doesn't burn. So the fact that if we join, because of our assessed valuation being higher than our neighboring communities, it's primarily based on our land value. The cost of the house isn't much different between us and Linwood for the same house, but the land value is. And as we transition into an assessed valuation model, our prices are going to go up. Ironically, because of that, their prices will go down. So we'll be end up subsidizing neighboring communities because of our higher assessed valuation model. That's what's at play here as we transition from a contract to the assessed valuation. And that benefit charge fee is really, really important. And it's a little bit complex to try to explain other than the simplistic way I've already done. But basically, for a box store, the Costco's, the Alderwood Mall, it takes a lot more fire resources to fight a fire there than it does a residential house. So as the benefit charge fee percentage goes up, they bear more of the burden than we would, we as a residential homeowner. So it's to our benefit to have a little bit higher benefit charge as long as they reduce the fire levy rate proportionally. They get the same amount of money regardless, but it helps the residential homeowner as opposed to, and it shifts to some of that tax burden to the box stores and large entities like that. In the negotiations, we weren't given that opportunity. They've artificially kept that benefit charge very low, substantially lower than our neighboring shoreline community, where we're at 7%, they're at 35%. They could have just as easily raised that benefit charge, reduced the fire levy rate, given us some sort of a tax break on this, but they haven't. So that's part of the negotiation that didn't occur. We didn't get a benefit from any of the negotiations, and we'd like to go back and renegotiate this, and that being one of the pieces on the table to help you. I mean, they're going to get the same amount of money. It's just how you shift it to the big box stores versus us as property owners. Oops, sorry.
Well, I'm not going to be able to respond to every point that Jim made, but I want to start with a couple important things. First of all, with regard to a benefit charge, and I'm happy to hear Jim talk about that, because a benefit charge, which is if we annex into the RFA, is one of the things that we're going to be paying for. And this idea that we're going to be paying more than other cities, a benefit charge actually mitigates that, because let me put this in very simple terms. If you have a waterfront place on Sunset Avenue and your assessed value is $3 million, or you have, and it's 2,000 square feet versus a 2,000 square foot place in Linwood, you're going to pay the same benefit charge because it's based on the structure. It's not based on your home's value. So a benefit charge is a more equitable way, and we get that with annexation in the RFA, to fund our fire services because we pay the same amount as Linwood. Now, the benefit charge is lower than in other cities, and Jim made a point about that with regard to shoreline. If you want to get into this and increase a benefit charge as citizens of Edmonds, there's an expression that I used to use back when I was a working person. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. If you want a stake in increasing the benefit charge, annex into the RFA so that we have representation on the RFA board. Now, we will have a liaison who won't have a voting stake for some period of time, but come 2027, we'll have the opportunity for up to 3 people from Edmonds to be on the RFA board. And by the way, if you're from Edmonds, you vote on all those positions. So if you want a stake in the future of fire and emergency services by way of a benefit charge and increasing that, the only way you're going to do that is by being in the RFA, not by being a contract city, which, by the way, we're going to actually be paying more as a contract city than if we join the RFA. Now, a couple other things. Subsidization. I've heard this talk, and it's true. The argument that, well, we're subsidizing these other cities that have lower assessed value. That's something Jim and we totally agree on that. It is subsidization. That's the conversation we had when we annexed into the Snow Isle library system. You know, folks, in Edmonds, we pay more. It's true. But when it comes time to sell your house or pass it down to your kids, you know, you're going to sell your house for more money than you are the place in Linwood. And your kids are going to have more value and equity, or more value in the home because we live in Edmonds. That's the property tax structure we have. It is subsidization. It is a reality, and it is exactly how it's going to be funded. So I think I've said enough.
Okay, so I do take exception in terms of the benefit charge, because we do have an opportunity, rather than annexing, to not vote yes right now, and renegotiate for a higher benefit charge going in. I mean, why do we need to wait to, quote, be brought to the table to have that discussion? We could have and should have, and we need to have that discussion before we annex. Let's bring that benefit charge up to a point where it benefits us, as opposed to waiting downstream and, you know, the hypothetical how many voting members we might have on some diluted panel downstream. We don't know that. That's just hypothetical. But what we do know is that we could do a renegotiation right now and make this more equitable for everybody.
Adam, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I would just say I disagree. The city actually negotiated before this went to the ballot. The city negotiated very well, I think, and the two people that were at the table were two people that have had experience in their own careers in contract negotiations. They were able to get from the RFA concessions with regard to the fire stations, which they're not going to be sold off. If we de-annex, we're going to go back to the city, and there was also concessions with regard to the rolling stock. So the city did a fine job. We're not going to be able to negotiate the benefit charge right now. I agree, Jim. You're right. It wasn't something that was, well, I guess we don't agree.
No.
But that's okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It's okay.
I think that we can move on.
Okay, so but I do think both of you raised a really good point, and that is the question of how does that work if annexation is approved? What kind of representation do we get through the RFA? I know there's a redistricting process that has to occur, right? If that happens, and that takes a while, and in the meantime, we have a non-voting representative that's on the board. And I've heard this interesting argument that people have said from both sides. One side will say, well, we want local control, and we want to have more of a say, and we believe that if we don't annex, we will have more control, because we won't have a representative for a while, and even so, with that redistricting, we don't know exactly how many representatives we will get. It could be more, it could be less, it kind of depends on, I'm not an expert on that, but that's my understanding. But I also have heard people say, well, we're contracting, we don't have local control now. I mean, we don't have a vote. So could we talk a little bit more about, kind of what the pros and cons of actually being a part of eventually being a voting member of that Fire Commission Board? Jim, go ahead.
You summarized it really fairly well.
So we can just move on.
Almost, but I'm going to take my time here, right? The answer is we don't know. And that's part of the problem. We don't know what the future is going to look like under annexation in terms of our voting representation. There's got to be a whole process where they do this redistricting. So we don't know how many members might Edmonds be apportioned. That's going to be after annexation. So, and in the interim time, Teresa said exactly well, we get one non-voting member on the board. Okay, so what kind of control or influence do we have with one non-voting member over a period of years, couple years, to look out for our wants and our needs in this whole process? And the fact that not knowing how many we end up with at the end, it's going to be diluted regardless. Back to the point on what our current situation is under contract, we do have complete representation by our council members because they vote on the contract. They oversee the contract. So right now, we have complete representation and control of the contract. And that's really what part of this is all about. And once we annex, we're going to be a couple steps removed over a larger geographic area with maybe 1 out of 7 voting members that are looking out for us. So that's really kind of what's at stake, and it's the unknown to your point in terms of the future, how many we get, how redistricting looks like, and what our influence might be.
Well, first of all, as I said before, the city will be voting on all 7 members of the RFA, number 1. Okay, that's representation. That's being at the table. It's not being on the menu. Okay, and I know from previous public statements by public officials that we will have at least 2 voting members through the districting process on, yes, we do. With all due respect, Jim, it is my understanding from statements made by public officials that you can choose not to trust, but if you don't, there's nothing I can do about that. But we're talking about at least two spaces on the RFA board. With regard to like council representation, first of all, it's cost prohibitive. We haven't spent enough time talking about how expensive this is going to be to the city and how what an impact it will make to the citizens of our community who want to keep this city, the city that we know and love, if we don't vote for annexation. The other thing is the city council, this is not a core competency for the city council to be dealing with fire, EMS, and emergency services. They're juggling 7 or 8, 9 balls at a time. We're talking about this is one less ball that the city has to juggle, frankly, in an area where they don't have a core competency. So I just respectfully disagree with Jim about this, but I will absolutely put my foot down on this idea of representation because we're going to be voting on all the commissioners and we're going to have at least 2 voting members 2020, not until 2027. I agree.
Anything more? All right, so that brings us to moving on to the final topic. We actually did, even though we
The
didn't.
final topic.
We are because
What a
we,
shame.
we managed to kind of go between a few over time, so I think we've covered them all.
Okay.
Unless you want to look at your notes and see if I've missed anything, but I think we're an hour in, and I want to give
Okay,
people a chance
great.
for questions. But we have one final topic, and it segues very well from what you've been talking about, and that is the issue of trust. And I've heard people talk about this issue. Who can you trust? Trust but verify, I heard Jim say. I've heard Adam talk about trust and trusting your elected officials. And I think it's an important conversation to have. And I'm going to start with, I think I've given you a couple of times to start, so I think we're now caught up on making sure everybody has equal start times. So Adam, talk to me about, and I will give Jim the next bite of the apple on this one. Why do you believe that we can trust that this is the right decision for Edmonds to annex?
Well, first of all, the proof is in the pudding. And I want to remind people that since 2010, South County Fire has been doing the work of protecting our community, and they have done it quite well. And we know that through a 71+% cardiac save rate. We know it, you all know it when paramedics have shown up at your door or the door of a loved one. We know them, but they also know us. They've proven themselves over the course of these many years that this is an agency that does good work and knows us. In fact, there were other contract cities that were now in the RFA. Those cities joined the RFA. I mean, they're not running for the hills. They're running to join the RFA. Shoreline, just the city of Shoreline, by 66% of the vote, agreed to annex into their RFA with other cities in King County. So this is also a model that works. It is also a model that provides fairness to the taxpayers of Edmonds. We will be paying our fair share. We will be about in the middle of other cities in Snohomish County as far as paying for fire and EMS services. I think that's important when we think about trust because we have to look at the pocketbook. But I think we have to look at the work that they have done and the way that they have provided a service to us in these many years. And I'll say this once again, and I'll not use all my time, and I'll turn it over to Jim. It's really astounding to me that it has only been recently that we've heard all of these bad things about the RFA and about South County Fire. It is amazing to me that a story about the save rate for cardiac arrest saves garners so much attention about all these people that why not just say, hey, thank you for saving some lives? Instead, it is criticism after criticism after criticism by people who think they know how to save people's lives. I mean, how about just saying thank you? So I feel a little bit passionate about that because I don't think it's fair to the men and women of the South County Fire Department, and it's not fair to the agency, and I think they've done good work to say nothing of the devastating impact it would have on Edmonds, and I'll save that for my closing argument. Here you go, Jim.
Thank you. And like I said in my opening statement, really appreciate our first responders. I mean, we can't do it without them. And they are doing a great job for us. And I didn't get my public service announcement in, but I'll do that right now. In regards to certainly the 71% cardiac arrest rate, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The other piece of that is, and this is for everyone here in the audience, is that we're a contributor to that. I mean,
the vast majority or the biggest influence on a cardiac arrest victim survival is the bystander who gets to them first and starts to do CPR before the aid units arrive in their 6 to 9 minute arrival times. So all of us have a responsibility here. So I encourage everyone, my public service announcement, if you already haven't learned CPR, please do so. Because we are the first ones that have the opportunity to help someone in need from a cardiac event. Now, getting back to topic here a little bit, in terms of the trusting, absolutely trust our fires, first responders. Great job. However, I think the bureaucracy of the RFA itself is what's really what we're talking about, and the costs associated with it, and the price that they're trying to move us to. I take a little bit of exception, maybe more than a little bit, to the way this is materialized by canceling our contract as opposed to renegotiating it. There are plenty of provisions I've already mentioned in our contract for renegotiation. They chose cancellation. So that kind of, are they a real partner? Unlike our police department that's working with our city right now to help mitigate some of the cost impact. On the other hand, our RFA, they're not so much coming to the table and helping us through this. The fact that they canceled it rather than renegotiating is, I think, a case in point. During the negotiations themselves, I would suggest maybe a little bit of bad faith negotiating itself. Why are we giving away our fire stations, over $6 million worth of value, just giving it over to RFA? Yeah, I mean, we hear we get them back free. Well, that doesn't do us any good right now. We could use some of that money for some of the other problems we have in the city. Again, another negotiation topic that we didn't leverage well enough into where we are right now. The RFA has been withholding money due us through transport fees, and it's totaling near $8 million right now. It's in litigation, so we're litigating. The city, our city, is litigating against the fire authority that we want to join to get our $8 million back.
I want to have, I appreciate you bringing that up because I realized we hadn't talked about that
Right.
yet in any detail. And I have heard folks say that, and I would also like to give Adam a chance to respond to that, if you're.
Yeah. That's,
Okay.
but
Thank
I
you.
still want to.
So I'm going to always assume good faith in folks, everyone in this room, and the folks that are daggerizing me. That's fine. In Jim too. That's okay. But it is incorrect, Jim, that there is pending litigation or even any pending contest over the transport fees. That is absolutely an incorrect statement. We have a member of the city council and a member of the RFA here right now, and I would fall over myself if they stand up and say, Mr. Cornell, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. I want to be very clear about this. That is incorrect. And in fact, the transport fee did not even exist in 2010. So it could not have been a part of the contract. I don't know what's happening in the city, but I can, in regard to any discussions, because I'm not part of that, there is no lawsuit. There is no contest. And in fact, the city is not entitled to a remittance of any transport fees because you have to be a Medicaid provider to be entitled to the remittance of transport fees, and the city of Edmonds is not a Medicaid provider. There is no justification for the city to have any of those fees remitted to them. Now, whether there's some reasonable minds differ and there's some future contest, that is, I suppose, possible. However, it's incredibly important to correct the record. There is no dispute. And I don't believe the city is entitled to any money for transport fees because they're not a Medicaid provider. So, Now, can I go into my other stuff that I've had my say on the GMT?
Let's
Talk about the.
let's let Jim respond first, and then we can go back to, let's have a little back and forth here. I think that's a good idea.
So at one of the town halls, our fire chief, Chief Eastman, categorically said that it was in negotiation, not negotiation, but one of the forms within the contract, the mediation, arbitration, before it got to a legal action. My understanding that, because it's in this mitigation or mediation part, that it's outside of our view. I know for a fact that our city attorney is going after to recoup our transport fees. Where it is, I haven't seen or heard of any sort of settlement, if you want to call it that, one way or the other. And because it's in where it is, the city is quiet on it. They do it in an executive session outside of our view. So I guess I still do take exception to my friend here in terms of where this is, because we don't know, other than it's pretty categorical in our contract. It says we are due all transport fees, all. Underline the word all. Doesn't say whether it's GEMT, which is ground emergency medical transport, which we haven't been receiving our reimbursement for, versus the other transport fee that we have been. So we've been over the last 6 years, and Adam's right. This didn't come up until later in our when this reimbursement form became available to the RFA. They've kept it for themselves. They've used it to mitigate some of the levy increases for member cities. So here again, some of our money is being used to mitigate or to subsidize member cities. And I'd like to get the city attorney here, but I don't think he'll show or he'll comment on it because of the status of it right now.
All right, Adam, you had some other things you wanted to.
Yeah, whether there's any, this is all subject to public record, and I would hope that my Edmonds News and other local outlets would question the city or the RFA about whether there's a pending contest or litigation, and you can get the answer from them. I think that's important because of the statements that Jim's mistaken statements. But let's talk about. Well, I can't even. Were we at concluding statements yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you one more.
Not yet. And you guys are thinking the same thing. When are we going to get there? We're gonna get there.
That will be next.
Okay. I do have a few things. So I do appreciate Jim acknowledging, after having corrected the record on this other thing, that we do get the fire stations back. Because I've heard this, like, we're just giving away the fire stations. And I do appreciate that. If we were to annex and de-annex, the city does get the fire stations back. I said this before, but the contract was canceled because by the RFA, they exercised their rights under the contract because we were underpaying 76 cents a thousand versus 121 for the other cities. So I'm just going to leave it at that and let us move on to closing statements and questions.
Okay. And as we flipped the coin at the beginning, you get to start first on closing statements, and Jim will be second.
Okay. So really,
3 minutes, Janice.
3 minutes. You're going to hold me to this one, right, Janice? Don't start yet. I haven't started. Okay. Tell me when you're starting. Okay. First of all, I want to thank Jim for taking the time to prepare for this, and Teresa for putting this on. It's been a good conversation and a necessary conversation. This is really, in my mind, the question about what kind of community do we want to live in? What kind of community and to answer that question, ask yourself, what kind of community have we had in Edmonds? Because if we fail to pass Proposition 1, we are going to be living in a different community because of the fiscal realities that we face as a city. And I'm not going to reiterate that, and the mayor is probably talking about this in his own thing tonight. But what kind of community do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a community where we have access to cherished public spaces, where we fully fund police and fire, where we are able to continue to have this great place that we all know and love? But it's about more than that. It's also about partnering with an agency that has done so much for us for so long. And a model that provides us as residents of the city an opportunity to be represented, to have direct representation, not collateral representation, but direct representation on the RFA board. I also think it's important to say in support of those two things that this is a proposition that has been the subject of much debate, more debate recently, but much debate since back in 2023. I think there's been more ink spilled over this topic than any other one since I've been in Edmonds, and that's appropriate because it's such a darn big deal, frankly. And so I think that the best choice for Edmonds, based on how it impacts our tax dollars, because you're going to pay for the tax man's going to get it one way or another. We're not getting any screaming deals on fire and EMS if we go someplace else. It's going to cost even more if we have to extend the contract beyond what we've already discussed with South County Fire. It makes the most financial sense, but it also makes the most sense because we have an agency of people who know us and we know them. So I would ask you to support Proposition 1, to support the community that we love and the community that we want to continue to love in the way that we've loved it so far.
Thanks, Jim.
I think there's a point of agreement here. We both love our city, right? And I think everyone here loves their city, and we're all looking out for the best way to move forward. We have a difference of opinions, on how that should happen, but ultimately it's going to be up to you. And I'm really looking forward of all of this. I'm looking forward to the questions because it's your questions that we need to answer right now, so you can be well informed. There are a couple things I would just like to bring up. Again, we keep hearing about the stable source of funding, right? We're the stable source of funding. You're the stable source of funding. It's your money, and how we use it should be subject to your vote and your understanding of what you're voting for. And that's the value of these public forums, is to help educate us as opposed to getting half-truths by whoever, elected officials or whatever. And for us to then integrate all and make our own personal decisions on the best way to move our city forward. What's at issue? 3 points. The cost of the service, which is doubling your taxes for the same level of service. If there was some service improvement that was specified through metrics-driven service improvement, hey, that might catch my attention a little bit more than I'm just going to pay twice as much for the same level of service. Granted, it is good service. So I'm going to certainly agree on that. I'm not disparaging. Our first responders are first rate. However, as the RFA, I don't believe they've really shown where there's economies of scale. I mean, every time a city annexes to the RFA, the costs are going up. So where are the economies of scale that one should expect by bringing us all in one regional area so that our costs actually come down? We're not seeing it, and they're increasing. They're coming in at an increasing rate. We shouldn't be the ones being completely burdened by this cost structure. Let's share the pain, if you will, of everyone that lives here, that benefits from our community. They should be part of the solution as opposed to just putting the burden on you. The local control. Local control is important for a number of reasons. One, we don't we don't need a one-size-fits-all model. Our community is a little bit different, seaside, et cetera, and to use a one-size-fits-all model is inappropriate for us. Yikes, I ran out of time. And then we got to protect our future.
Okay, thank you both. So we are now going to go on to questions. Yeah, you can applaud for them. I think they're doing amazing job. So Inez, I think what I'm going to do is, why don't you bring the box over to me?
Teresa, can I just ask a general question? Who is on the board in 2027? Who is on the board?
Well, that will be an audience. Did you put something in the box? No, because that's a good question.
I'm happy to answer your question
Yes,
after
please.
the event.
Oh, right, that would
Okay,
be,
unless somebody wants to ask it ahead of
Yeah.
time. Thank you. And if you have more that you want to put in here, feel free. So I'm going to read the number. I'm going to hold the microphone for whoever is going to ask the question. You have 15 seconds, and you will hear that obnoxious noise at the end of your 15 seconds. So the first number I drew was 703420. Whoever has that ticket can come up and ask a question. Ending in 240. 240. I feel like I'm doing the lottery here. 703420. Does anybody have that ticket? Is that you, Daryl?
Hard of hearing. 420?
Yes. Come on up. Here, I'm holding the mic. You have 15 seconds.
Darrell Hub, 50 years in Edmonds, 20 years volunteering for Edmonds issues. The mayor in his State of the City last year said our budget problem was 20.4 million. It's grown now to his last statement of 29.4. If we look at that, we have to pay for that. That is going to take our assessed values, whether we give it to South County Fire or ourselves, to $2.83, up from $1. So we're going to have to pay a lot of money for
Do
this.
you have a question?
I'd like to ask both of them, if we were to pay that full amount equally among all of the cities, would you allow us to add to that amount and provide more service in different kinds of service?
Thank you, Daryl. Who wants to start?
That's really a question. You're right. Yeah, go ahead. I think we agree that.
Yeah, we're just convincing amongst each other here, because the question is probably beyond our pay grade, right? It's probably more at the council level, and
Daryl could probably answer that question himself.
yeah. But to a little bit to Daryl's point is that things are going up, right? I mean, they're going to be asking us for more of our resources, and let's put it all on a table so we see what the total dollar amount is.
I talked about this before, and I'll be just as brief as Jim, but if annexation fails, I hope that, because I love Edmonds like Jim, I hope that those of you who are opposed to this proposition will vote for all the levies that are coming your way, because if you don't, the city's going to go bankrupt.
Okay, the next ticket number is 703423. 423 are the last three numbers.
No take back, Steve.
My name is Chris Taché. I've made some comments in some of these articles and try to be civil about it. So the real question, I think it's addressed as much to the RFA as anything, is our taxes are going to go through the roof for all kinds of reasons, and not just city and fire, but others as well. Why shouldn't the RFA also be part of that discussion? Why do they think they should increase their costs by 97% when we've got all these other costs going up as well? We think we should share in the pain with the rest of us. And that's kind of a statement plus a question, but would you please share in the pain with the rest of us? How's that for a question?
Thank you, Chris.
I don't think the RFA gets to answer that question. And of course, I can't speak for the RFA. I'm on the pro committee. But I mean, this idea of self-sacrifice is a good one. And I go back to what I've already said before, is that we as a city, we have been underpaying for fire and emergency services. We have been getting a good deal from the RFA, in my opinion, and I know you might respectfully disagree, but let me more answer your question about sharing the pain. Is the funding, what the cost? It's not just the fire engines and the ambulances. It's the people that work at the RFA, the firefighters and the emergency medical, the paramedics. They have a right to a living wage and to rely on the income that is owed to them. They have a right to the state mandated health care and paid sick leave and all the rest of that. We want those folks who sacrifice every day in our public servants and give their lives. We want them to be whole. We want them, some of whom are our neighbors, to be healthy. And that there's a cost. There's a cost to that.
And I know I'm repeating myself now, but our contract specifies verily that we pay fully burdened wage and benefits for everything that Adam just said to our firefighters.
You have a little time left. Do you want to know? No? Okay. Next question is 413. Okay, that's it. All right, very good. Okay. I'm going to hang on to it if you don't. Okay, then I'll go to sure.
My question is, bringing up this last point, there's something missing here. There's information missing. If one of you is saying that we pay a contract price, but you're saying that we're not paying contract price, then something's wrong. So somehow or another, if your campaign or your side doesn't have information, then I think we have a better idea if we take the time to find out why there's such a difference.
Thank you for your question.
Well, I'm going to try to address, I'm not exactly sure what your question was, but I think it's about why can't we just look at other options, and why don't we exercise the benefit of time? Is that?
My question is about if we are paying contracted rates for the service, then why are you saying that we need to have more money to pay for these benefits that you're saying obviously sound like they're missing?
Because the prices for everything have gone up, and the reason that a contract extension beyond 25 is going to cost more than if we annex into the RFA. The reality is that inflation and the cost of everything is going up, and that's why it actually is. And I understand the pain that we're all feeling. I don't want to pay more property taxes, but all that information is publicly available about why the contract price is going up and why we would have to pay what we're paying if you pass Proposition 1.
So it gets back to being under contract versus under the assessed valuation model. We're under a contract, so we specify how many firefighters we want and the service level that we want, and we're paying our fair share for the services that we've contracted for. As soon as we go under the assessed valuation model, now that's the parity argument that they use, where it's spread amongst all of us, and we're at a higher rate than what we're paying under contract for the same service. So it's going from a contract model to the assessed valuation model. But for sure, under contract, we're paying everything that we should, plus the percentage of overhead to support some of the ancillary things that Adam mentioned.
Adam, do you have anything else?
I'll just say this. Edmonds is paying $12 million for 3 stations. Okay? Edmonds is paying $12 million for 3 stations. Linwood is paying $12 million for 2 stations.
So we're going to make our memory
For the same level of service.
Okay. Good. Next question. 426.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Wright, and I think I'm following up a little bit on your question. So if we're paying cost plus right now under contract, we're not paying cost plus
We're
right
actually,
now?
we're not paying cost plus. That's a understanding of what we're doing. We're not paying, it's not a cost plus contract.
Then what is it?
It's not cost plus. What we're paying for, I'm trying to,
I'm getting the formula in there.
what? No, Mr. Commissioner Chan, that's okay. That's
That's
okay.
okay, we gotta keep it between these two,
That's
otherwise we
okay.
got.
It's not a cost, well, I'm not a contractor, so I apologize for not knowing the precise answer, but I can tell you that it's not a cost plus contract. And if it was, I know that my colleagues on the pro committee and the RFA and everybody else would tell me that I'm wrong, but I guess it's not a cost plus contract.
Okay, but so we're supposed to be covering your cost with a little extra for overhead.
Well, not my cost, and it's
Okay, RFA costs.
it's not, it's not a cost for we're not paying
We're paying
overhead.
for all of our labor and our fire engines and firehouses and
No,
all of our costs.
No, that's not correct. Go ahead.
Okay, so our contract specifies, I think, like 55 or 58 firefighters that we pay for under, full wage and benefits. Plus we pay 20% for overhead, plus another 5% they cover equipment expenses. So about 25% in overhead. And that's a ratio off of the expenses that we pay for the labor. So it's basically the labor, which are the firefighters, plus the overhead, which covers the overhead burden that supports the firefighters at their headquarters, plus 5% that covers the maintenance and service of the equipment itself. So that's basically our contract, and it's specified on the number of firefighters that we pay for.
I guess what I'm wondering is where we were falling short, where RFA is losing money, because if they have a $45 million reserve, it seems like maybe they're overcharging their other cities, and we're paying for the cost and.
And I would also say, if either of you want to add to that, but I don't expect either of you to be RFA cost experts. That's not your necessarily your area of expertise. Certainly feel free to add more if you'd like, but there are folks here in this room who are willing to stay after, right, to talk more. If people have questions, they're nodding their heads. So we can do that too. But do you want to add anything more?
I don't know what more I can add,
Okay.
unless there's
I mean,
another question, clarifying question that someone has.
We'll get to some more questions, and I don't mean to, we've just got a lot of questions. We've probably got another 10 or 15 in here, so I want to make sure we can get through as many as we can. But knowing that you aren't experts in that area, either of you, I think it would be good to have people answer those separately. The next question is 433. Yeah. No, I got the microphone right in front of you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a simple question, I think, which is, who are you going to believe? Because I hear the different sides, and who are you going to trust? I recall that the last 4 mayors of Edmonds, plus I guess the current fire chief, have all said that they're for annexation. So who are you going to believe? That's my question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chip. You go first.
Yeah, answer that one.
Okay, so I'm the facts and data guy, right? As I get into it, I think there's some room for improvement.
I don't think that we've been given all the information to make a very well-informed decision. I try to state my case or our case. I mean, there's a growing community sentiment about where we are, what it's going to cost us. Certainly, I mean, and this is the value of this forum, to ask those pointed questions so that you can try to get a better response than what you're getting by reading anything or hearing the hearsay that's going around the community. Because this is an important decision, and it's, we haven't really touched on it, but it's, for all practical purposes, irreversible. Yeah, we're going to hear, you can just do a simple resolution, but for all practical purposes, this decision is going to be irreversible.
Well, I appreciate the question, and again, 6 of 7 current sitting council members, Mayor Hawkinson, Mayor Erling, and Mayor Rosen have endorsed this. And these are people that come from all ideological perspectives on our council. And that's pretty unusual to have such vast agreement. And the agreement is because it's in the best interest of the city, frankly. And I'm not going to repeat the points that I previously made, but I wrote a letter kind of on the heels or maybe before Jim's latest thing about this very question. It does come down to who do you trust. And you can choose not to trust the politicians, and I know that that's what the loyal opposition has asked you to do. But when you look at the folks who are supporting this who have so many different ideological perspectives, why wouldn't you trust that in addition to a process community conversation with the council that really began in 2023?
Okay.
All right, on to 427.
Oh, yeah. I know you.
Yeah. Too many questions, but so we've talked a lot about this is going to cost at least $20 million a year no matter what option we take. So we're going to have to share the pain, to use your words. So can you explain how instituting one of the most regressive tax structures, the sales tax, where everybody in this room and everybody else will have to pay more to go out to eat or do anything else, how that is better than what the RFA is proposing?
That's a question.
I mean, to your point, what the RFA is proposing is exactly that. I mean, it's a regressive tax. I'm sorry?
You proposed a sales tax increase, so why is that good?
Oh, okay. So now let's step back because wait. Bear with me because I mean we've got kind of a couple of problems, right? We've got the global problem relative to the city, and I'm suggesting that the RFA problem is a subset of that. The sales tax is one way to spread some of the pain, if you will, to outsiders. Those that buy from things within Edmonds, just like Linwood is doing to us. Their sales tax rate is higher than ours. So why don't we go at least, if we want to start talking about parity, why don't we go at least parity with where Linwood is? How many of us shop at the Costco or the Home Depots in Linwood?
I shop in Edmonds.
Our taxes are going to benefit them, and they got to reduce the levy rate as a result.
Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement that in your plan, in your letter, that there was a suggestion that there be an increase in sales tax. That if you want to continue to degrade a city, let's make it less friendly for people to come and spend money. It's great that you can go to Alderwood Mall and buy a bunch of stuff, but we're not that. We're not Linwood in any way, and we want people to come to our city. And you're simply passing the cost down to other people, not just the citizens of Edmonds, but the people that would come here and spend more money. And to Maria's point, it is an incredibly regressive tax. We're talking about fairness and equitable distribution of the pain. This is going to hit a lot harder the people who are not as fortunate as you and me, Jim. And I think that people need to consider that.
The next number is 408.
It's not me, I'm leaving.
Oh. Thank you for clarifying.
Was that something I said?
Does anybody have 408? Maybe they already left. Going once, going twice. $4.29. Anybody have $4.29? You're just not admitting you have $4.29. Okay. It's also okay if you already got your question answered, of course. 438.
Now it worked out good.
As a registered nurse, I'd like to ask why we think a response time between 6 or 7, 9 minutes is a good thing when the brain without oxygen at 4 to 5 minutes is essentially gone. There's nothing left. So why would you come and jumpstart a heart, if that's the term you want to use, at 7 minutes when the patient is dead already? You don't bring back, okay, that's what isn't there.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not a doctor, but and I want to be respectful to you, Teresa, and I know that this has been an issue for you, but I'll just say this, that this goes back to like not trusting the people that actually know how to do the work. If you don't trust a firefighter or a paramedic to do their job and to know how to save a life or to how to try to save a life, I'll tell you, I ran the Boston Marathon in 2013, and I went back in 2014, and I was on a plane back after finishing the Boston Marathon, and we were over Fargo, North Dakota, and a guy behind me had a cardiac arrest, and they worked on that guy until we landed in Fargo, and I got off the plane with him and his wife. And I don't know when he actually left this earthly world, but it sure as heck meant a lot that to his wife, that somebody was trying to work on that guy.
Yeah, and it gets back to the public service announcement that everyone, we should all learn CPR.
Yeah. 434? 434? Anybody have 434? $421.
Hi, Niall McShane. Adam, you've mentioned tonight a couple of times that there is no contract beyond 2025, and if we were to continue a contract, it would be more expensive than annexation. Isn't it true that there is a contract agreement in the event that annexation fails, and that the terms in that contract are that we would pay the same rates as the existing RFA levy and fire benefit charge?
Thank you.
I don't know I want to get back to you on that, Niall, but what I do know is that it will be at least the same cost to the taxpayers with annexation as with an extension of the contract, as far as just the actual cost. So it would be, at the very best for us, it would be the same cost, but we also know that every year costs are going up. So I can't say what it would be like if the city executed an extension to 2026. But it would be probably about the same cost. But what that doesn't account for is losing the firefighters that have known our community since 2010. What it doesn't account for is the unbelievable impact to the city's general fund if we fail to pass annexation. But you're right. But the problem with that is future or further cuts to degrade the quality of the city that we live in if we don't pass annexation.
I think a little bit of point of confusion, and I was meaning to correct you earlier, is that you've been saying 2025. The contract extension is for 2026. That's already been negotiated. If we vote down annexation, it's a 2026 contract. So that's where I think where the confusion was.
Thank you. It's always good to have numbers, people keeping us on track. 439. is like winning the lottery, isn't it?
Okay, I have a what if question.
What if we don't pass?
Oh, wait till you get on the mic.
I don't need that really. What if we don't pass the RFA this year? And then we roll around the next time and we decide, okay, we're not going with it and we're going to go somewhere else with Shoreline, Muggle Aberdeen, I don't know. What happens, I know we keep the stations, what happens to all the equipment, what happens to all the personnel if we don't stay with the RFA in the long run?
Well,
thank you.
With regard to the rolling stock, I think that I could be corrected, but I think the council, as part of their negotiation with the annexation process, the city would get the fire stations back and the rolling stock. So the city would get back the fire engines and the equipment and the infrastructure, as well as the cost as well as the infrastructure. Yeah.
Not the personnel.
Well, no, not the personnel. You could say bye-bye to the firefighters that have been with us for so long.
Anything to add? I don't have. Okay, all right. 437.
Larry, if you are living in Edmonds.
Wait till you start.
Continuation of the same theme, if you will, but the mayor recently said our financial problems are more than just paying for fire and paramedic services. So my question to you would be, why would it not be better to sign this 1-year extension, which SCF has already given us, and have a discussion of things like, what does public safety entail? How do we deliver it? How do we pay for it?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, the city spent time on that and commissioned a Fitch report, which told us that annexation was the lowest cost option. And there isn't any guarantee for future funding. It would depend upon the city passing another levy or a couple levies to try to fund fire and emergency services. And again, as I've said many times before, the failure to pass annexation will have a significant degrading effect on the things that we know and love about our city.
So I'm not sure whether quite hit at your question, but again, the stable source of funding, it's our money. Not everything has been made visible to us to make the informed decision. I think that you're looking for in terms of what all of our costs are for the city, including the RFA, and giving us that extra year to sort all this out. I think it would be beneficial, and hence why I've got the position I've got.
Thank you. 419.
Oh, I think, is that me? I've not got my glasses.
You are 419.
Oh,
Oh, good. We're going to get to answer your question.
Good, because you had a question earlier. Now you can ask it.
No, I'm not going to ask that. I'm going to put them.
Okay.
I'm not going to waste that. I think we should have tariffs. All right, so my question is, can we think outside of the box? Can we look at why Snohomish keeps so much of our property taxes and our sales tax? And maybe we should share the burden more, because I think the bow will break. We've got Washington state taxes, we've got city taxes, Snohomish taxes. When does the bow break for people?
Boy, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've been having a discussion in the analog, or the goose that laid the golden egg. Well,
Yep.
we're the geese, right? And we've got only so much money. Where that breaking point is, I think let's put it this way. I think it's different for each of us, right? That's probably the simplest way I can say it. And I can't really put myself in someone else's shoes. Certainly, it will affect a lot of our seniors. Fixed income individuals will get hit the hardest, and at one level. And then, yeah, how affordable will the community be
regardless of where it is. But you're right. I mean, it's a trying times, not only locally within our city, but regionally, and then, I mean, we can even go up nationally at this point, right? So I wish I could give you a better answer, but.
Well, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to give you a better answer either. We have lower property, we have,
It's a thought.
Yeah.
We all need to think about this.
right.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, that's not on the ballot.
I know it's
With,
not.
with Proposition 1. We do have lower taxes than at least King County, I know of. But it's, and I think maybe significantly, so at least there's that. But it's, the costs are going up for everything. The costs of operating a fire district are going up. The costs of eggs are going up, and we can't solve that problem. But what I do know is as far as this particular issue, we're going to pay for it one way or another, and it's a question of what kind of city do we want to live in if this doesn't pass, because a lot of the things that we love about Edmonds are going to change.
422.
22?
22.
Oh, I guess that's me.
All
We
right.
switched numbers. I got confused there. So,
Can you come up so you can speak in the mic?
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I understand correctly that if we choose to go contract, cost is going to be similar to the same as if we do annexation, but we would have more opportunities to restructure how it's financed, which is the point. So why wouldn't we give ourselves the option of looking at alternative ways to finance the same cost?
Thanks.
Well, because we're out of time. And we have a council that commissioned a report that told us that the lowest cost option, even if you consider these other options that I've talked about, why Shoreline RFA isn't viable, why Mukilteo partnership isn't viable, restarting our fire department is a non-starter. You've got millions of dollars of upgrades.
No, I think you misunderstood my question. If the cost is the same, it's not a question of choosing a lower cost. It's a question of how you finance the cost.
Because I can answer that question. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't answer the question directly. Because by going into the RFA, first of all, it's the best quality service, number one. But second, with regard to the pure cost of it, it switches the funding to property tax, so it frees up money for the city to fill the massive gap that we have in our city coffers. So it's no longer coming out of the city's pocket. That's the answer.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit different perspective. It's your money, right? And you're going to be paying it one way somewhere versus another. By having it locally controlled under a contract gives you the best opportunity to mitigate your costs as opposed to putting it all under a property tax. All under your property tax in the assessed valuation model, as your assessed valuation goes up, so does the cost for the service. Under the contract, because it's not stipulated and not tied by law, it gives the community, basically our elected representatives, the council, the ability to negotiate what service level we want as opposed to what service level they want to provide us.
All right, we're on to 411.
411?
That would be okay.
Bingo.
That's a 411.
All right.
Show me your good side. A couple of years ago, maybe 2018, I lost confidence in the RFA commissioners after a racial incident in which they refused to discipline the two commissioners who made comments like that in public. Why should I trust them now?
Well, first of all, I think I know what incident you're talking about. I mean, I think it was something that was of some public information or it was reported upon. I mean, that's vile, disgusting. It's not the sorts of things that should be said in a civil society, and I completely condemn those statements. And I guess I got to say, I mean, I wasn't there. I'm speaking about what I know from what was reported on, and if true about what was reported on, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve it, that's completely disgusting. And what I would say, and I would never endorse that, and I would say that if we annex into the RFA, instead of contracting with an agency, you're going to have an opportunity to vote on all those 7 commissioners, and you can vote for whoever you want. If that's a showstopper for you for the RFA, I understand.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't comment because I'm not aware of the incident you're referring to. But I'd like to talk with you afterwards. I just don't know of it at all. So
We are actually on our last question, and it is 425.
Hello, I live in a city that about 2.5 years ago did get annexed into the RFA. Pretty high property values in that area. My family uses the services, has used the ambulance services about 4 times already with excellent results, excellent response time. And I just want to say that,
do you have a question? Because this is a question.
Oh, and actually, we approved it by 73%. My question is, how much is any city willing to give up by just starting all over, or by not looking at all the services that are offered by the RFA, and just assess it that way so you can be sure that your family is protected? How much are you willing to give up?
So are you asking that of these folks to respond to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
well, I think it's really clear that we're getting quality service right now, and we're not going to be willing to give up quality service. What's at discussion really is how much we're paying for that service. So yeah, I think, but to your point, absolutely, the quality service we're getting, kudos to them, doing a good job.
I mean, what we're really talking about with regard to the cost, and it's not insignificant to the woman that talked about how everything's going, Jenny, is going up. I mean, really, the difference in the cost, if you're purely talking about cost here, it's like you're rooting around the sofa for change. The costs, whether we annex or whether we try to continue a contract with the RFA, which is not assured, the savings, if any, are going to be marginal. And it comes back to an agency that we know, that knows us, who are going to be protecting our community, who have the infrastructure for everything like emergency services, hazardous materials response. You can't just like go out and contract that out with some other entity. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a course of years. And in the meantime, the city is getting sucked farther and farther down this sort of fiscal quicksand.
I'd like to understand how big that quicksand is before I spend my money on digging myself out of it. And that's really kind of where we are. And so that might be a good analogy. I mean, how big is that quicksand pool that we're in? If the city could put out on a table for us, give us their recovery plan, then I think we'd all feel much more comfortable in our decision making here. But right now, personally, I believe they've got the cart in front of the horse. Need to hit the pause button, regroup. Let's get the horse in front of the cart, see where we are, and then we can make an informed decision going forward for all of our problems, all of our financial problems that the city faces.
The RFA is one of them, but it's not the only one. But let's put this in the right sequence so that, that we can address it the right way.
Well, believe it or not, we are finished. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Adam. Thanks to all of you for your great questions and for being respectful and having a good meeting. Thank you.